My husband Paul and I embarked on two significant journeys together, getting married and building our family home simultaneously. Constructing our home was the largest financial investment of my life, and it became a symbol of our commitment to each other. We both envisioned cherishing this space together for years to come. However, despite my attachment, I have already discarded all your belongings. It's hard to believe that something as monumental as our family home could ever be taken from us. We tied the knot 5 years ago and began building our dream home at the same time. Over the years, we've been diligently making mortgage payments, and I still remember the fresh scent of our new home and the warm, loving expressions of my sweet Paul. Our dream included a spacious living room bathed in morning sunlight streaming through large windows. We were both involved in the design of our home, with Paul considering my preferences at every step. I was particularly keen on having a built-in kitchen and carefully chose the size and orientation of the windows. On Sundays, at around 1 p.m., the sunlight would filter in just perfectly, allowing us to relax and even doze off in the serene atmosphere of our living room. During these blissful moments, brewing coffee with aromatic beans fills the room with a delightful scent, encapsulating what I consider my ultimate moments of happiness. Realistically, achieving this dream home was expensive, but I am profoundly grateful for having worked consistently, enabling us to afford these blissful moments in our family home. When Paul and I were approved for the mortgage, I felt a sense of pride for all the hard work I had put in, and Paul shared that sentiment. Just a month after completing our family home, I received an unexpected call from my mother-in-law, Sophia, who had been living alone on welfare. "You and Paul built a family home, right? Now that it's finished, I'd like to move in with you both. If I continue to live in this run-down house by myself, I might fall ill," she explained. I had only met Sophia briefly when Paul and I were planning to marry, and we weren't particularly close. To be honest, the idea of having Sophia move in with us was quite daunting. As newlyweds, Paul and I were just beginning to settle into our own space. Understanding my reservations, Paul assured me, "Helen, I know having my mother live with us would be overwhelming for you. I'll talk to her and let her know we can't live together." I was grateful that Paul was considerate of my feelings and took the initiative to address the situation. Paul spoke to Sophia, and she didn't move in with us. 3 years later, after the birth of our first child, Sophia saw an opportunity and broached the subject again. "Isn't it tough managing the baby and house chores on your own? If I move in, I can help with the baby and the chores," she proposed, seeing it as a great opportunity for all of us. Indeed, managing a newborn and keeping up with household duties was challenging. I was contemplating returning to work eventually, and having an extra pair of hands could be beneficial. I think it might be helpful to have someone assist us, at least for a while. If Sophia truly contributes as promised, it could work out, I considered. Sophia was overjoyed at the prospect. This time, the idea of Sophia moving in seemed more practical. If she upheld her promise to help, her living with us could genuinely ease our burdens and enrich our family life. When I agreed to let Sophia move in with us, it was under the condition that she would assist with the baby and house chores. Initially, Sophia took this responsibility very seriously. She would eagerly take over the laundry, folding clothes neatly, and even watching the baby while I went out for groceries. "Okay, I'll do the laundry and fold the clothes," she'd say with a smile. "While you're gone for groceries, I'll look after the baby," she'd assure me. I was genuinely surprised by her dedication and found myself feeling a bit guilty for having doubted her. It seemed she was proving to be a great help around the house, and I started to appreciate her presence more. However, this burst of helpfulness from Sophia only lasted about a week. After that, her enthusiasm seemed to wane rapidly. She began to slack off, lounging around once my husband left for work and neglecting to take care of my son even when explicitly asked. This became a frequent issue, and my trust in Sophia started to erode. Sophia's commitment to helping with household chores and caregiving duties dwindled, and it reached a point where I couldn't rely on her even to watch her grandson, let alone help with other tasks. When my husband tried to address this, Sophia either didn't take him seriously or would respond defensively. "You know, I'm doing my best too. Helen is just being too strict." But Paul would firmly reply, "But you need to help out properly. That's the whole reason we're living together." Whenever Paul confronted her about her lack of effort, she would either shift the blame onto me or break down in tears, trying to evoke his sympathy. "Are you trying to kick me out? Please don't be so cold," she would plead, using her emotions to deflect from the real issues at hand. This pattern made it increasingly challenging to maintain a harmonious living situation, as Sophia seemed unwilling to uphold her part of our agreement consistently. From the moment Sophia moved in, the situation gradually deteriorated. Initially, she appeared eager to help with our son and the household chores, but that enthusiasm quickly faded. Over time, she not only stopped helping, but also started to express annoyance towards our son. "Oh, he's crying again. He's so loud. Hurry up and make him stop," she would complain, which only added to my anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort every time she was around him. "I'm really afraid to let our son get close to Sophia," I confessed to my husband. "I think it's best if she leaves our home as soon as possible." Understanding my distress, my husband agreed and began arranging for Sophia to live independently. He started by renting an apartment for her, hoping to ease the transition out of our home. Meanwhile, Sophia's belongings cluttered our living room, creating hazards for our young son who could potentially hurt himself with the scattered items. Despite our clear warnings and discussions, Sophia's attitude remained unchanged. "We need to persuade her to leave," I thought determinedly. Just as we were firming up our resolve, I experienced a heart-stopping moment. I couldn't find our son in his room where he was supposed to be sleeping. Frantically searching, I found Sophia outside with him. "What are you doing? How dare you take our son out without telling us?" I exclaimed in panic. "I just wanted to show off my grandchild a little." "Don't worry so much," Sophia retorted dismissively, unmoved by my distress and even criticizing me for being too loud. Shocked by her audacity and lack of remorse, after hearing about the incident, my husband became furious. Without further question, we decided it was time for Sophia to leave our home immediately. A year has since passed. Our son celebrated his first birthday and began taking his first steps. But then, tragedy struck. My husband was involved in a fatal accident on his way home from work. Losing him so suddenly left me speechless and overwhelmed with grief. At Paul's funeral, amidst the profound sadness, I could not stop crying, wondering how I would manage to raise our son on my own. When Sophia approached me at the funeral, her greeting was tinged with a sorrow I expected we would share. "Hello, Helen. Long time no see. I never thought we'd meet again under such circumstances," she said. Reflecting on her loss as a mother, I could only imagine the depth of her grief at losing her son. "I must be strong," I replied, fighting to keep my composure, aware that my grief wasn't the only one that mattered at that moment. "It's just so sudden," I added, the words barely a whisper. However, the direction of our conversation took an unexpected turn. "Since the family house belonged to my son, I'm supposed to inherit it, right? Could you also leave the furniture?" Sophia asked. Her words felt out of place, and I was taken aback. Here we were, supposed to be mourning our shared loss, and yet she began to talk about inheriting the house and its furnishings. Sophia's claim threw me into confusion. The house, built with an investment of about $650,000, still had a mortgage. "Even if that's true, what about the mortgage?" I asked, hoping to find some reason for her approach. "You're going to pay that, right?" she responded. I couldn't believe she would bring up such matters at Paul's funeral. "I'm not sure this is the right time to discuss this, Sophia. We're here to remember Paul," I protested, my patience wearing thin. "But it's very important we discuss this. I will get the house, right?" she persisted, seemingly oblivious to the solemnity of the occasion. Her insensitivity was too much. "Enough, Sophia. We're at Paul's funeral. If you can't respect this moment, please leave," I said firmly. Taken aback by my sternness, Sophia fell silent and withdrew. In the weeks following the funeral and cremation, I took time to gather myself. Mourning couldn't consume me. I had a son to raise and a life to rebuild. I returned to work, juggling my job, household chores, and caring for my son, all while he began attending daycare. Despite the challenges, I was determined to forge a stable and nurturing future for us. One day, after picking up my son, I arrived home only to find all my belongings piled up at the garbage dumpster near the entrance. My heart sank as I saw my clothes, desk, and work items thrown out haphazardly. Thankfully, my more valuable possessions, like expensive clothing, accessories, the TV, and the large fridge, were not discarded. Just then, a mover approached me. "You live here, right? The cost of this move is—" He started, handing me a bill. I was confused, trying to piece together what was happening. After listening to the mover, it became clear that Sophia had orchestrated this. What is she trying to do? Is Sophia in my house right now? I wondered in disbelief. I rushed to the front door only to find it wouldn't open. Don't tell me Sophia has changed the locks already, I thought, a sinking feeling in my gut. It seemed possible that Sophia had taken my house keys during the chaos surrounding Paul's funeral. Frustrated and desperate for answers, I called Sophia. What is the meaning of this, Sophia? How dare you enter my house without permission and throw out my belongings without consulting me? Sophia's response was cold and harsh. You're not family anymore since Paul is gone. Get out before I report you for trespassing, she snapped before hanging up. I was appalled by her selfishness and disregard. Realizing I couldn't resolve this immediately, and with my son beginning to cry, I decided we needed a safe place to stay temporarily. I instructed the movers to take my belongings to a storage unit, and we headed to a hotel. I considered staying at my parents' home but needed some time to think. A week later, Sophia called me, sounding very upset. "Hey, the police came over here," she began, her tone frantic. This unexpected turn of events hinted at more complications to come, but I knew I had to stand firm and reclaim our home for my son and me. The situation escalated when Sophia called, clearly distressed, claiming that the police were trying to evict her. "They're trying to make me leave the house. Please do something about it," she pleaded. It was ironic and infuriating how she sought my help after forcibly evicting me. Sophia's actions were excessively selfish. During our conversation, she coldly stated, "Since I've gone through a post-mortem divorce settlement, I am no longer your family. This legal process terminates any relationship between me and my deceased husband's relatives." She firmly believed that as Paul's spouse, she had the sole right to the house and had no obligations toward me. "You know I have nothing, and yet you're kicking me out?" I responded, incredulous at her lack of empathy. "Yes, I did as you wish since I'm not considered your family anymore," she retorted. Her words were harsh, claiming no gratitude for any past help she might have offered to my son, branding me ungrateful and cold. Sophia seemed oblivious to the wrongful nature of her actions, responding with anger rather than understanding. She hadn't significantly cared for my son, so her claims of being owed something fell flat to me. Well, this is the reaction I expected, I thought. If that's the case, you can stay in the house if you really want to, I finally said, setting a condition. But please pay the mortgage in one installment. Puzzled, she replied, "You don't have to pay the mortgage. It's been covered up to now. You only need to pay the remaining mortgage, but be aware it's quite a substantial amount," I informed her. "How could I possibly pay the entire mortgage in one installment on a house that's only been built for 4 years?" she protested. "Well, if you can't manage that, then the house is legally mine, and you, who are not my family, could be reported for trespassing," I explained, ready to end this exhausting conversation. I hung up the phone, relieved yet dismayed. Fortunately, due to insurance, the mortgage payments were covered following my husband's passing, easing one of my major financial burdens. The whole ordeal was a stark reminder of the complex and often painful interactions that can follow personal loss. After ensuring that Sophia was unaware the mortgage was covered by insurance, I finally regained entry to our house a few days later. What greeted me was a scene of chaos and neglect. Furniture was battered and strewn about, and my personal belongings, including clothes, were carelessly scattered and damaged. I meticulously documented each item's condition with photographs, noting down the associated costs, an unfortunate necessity given Sophia's abrupt eviction. While I considered the option of filing a claim for these damages, the likelihood of it being dismissed was high, given Sophia's financial situation. I saved the documentation anyway, preparing for any future altercations, to have evidence that could potentially silence any further mischief from her. In a baffling turn of events, Sophia contacted me shortly afterward, demanding a $5,000 payment for what she claimed was trespassing on her part. Her audacity was glaring, and I dismissed the demand outright. It was clear who the victim was, and I certainly wasn't about to pay her for the turmoil she caused. 4 years elapsed, during which Sophia was unable to meet the fines imposed on her. Her failure to do so led to a guilty verdict for malicious intent, and she was subsequently imprisoned for years. Upon her release, she reached out again, her voice tinged with desperation. "I'm really in trouble. I don't have anywhere to go," she explained, likely from a payphone, her calls frequently interrupted as she scrambled for change from passers-by. Sophia's predicament was dire. She had no home to return to. The apartment previously rented by my husband to help her transition out had been terminated, and the family home that Paul and I had built was sold to preempt any attempts by her to reclaim it or cause further disturbance. With a firm resolve, I responded to her pleas. "Sophia, this is the bed you've made. I have nothing more to do with you. Please stop calling me and manage on your own," I said, hanging up before she could reply. It was a harsh but necessary boundary to maintain for the sake of my own and my son's peace. As I hung up, I turned to a photo of Paul and our son, reflecting on the strength and resilience that I needed to instill in him. Paul would have wanted our son to grow up capable and self-reliant, and I was committed to ensuring that. The closure of my dealings with Sophia marked a new chapter, one where I could focus fully on nurturing my son's future, fortified by the lessons of our past. Thank you for listening to this story. Please subscribe to our channel, and I hope to see you in our next video.